Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. All about nutrition from your favorite dietitian. Everything you need to digest in your mind. Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. Making you healthier one bite at a time. With Tony. Woo.
Hello and welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast. I'm Tony Marinici, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time. I'm so excited for you guys to hear this next interview. I have in front of me Matthew Phifer. He is a toxic relationship expert, and he is going to share with you so much incredible information. And as you guys know, I'm currently writing a book about the parallels between dieting, dating, and romantic relationships. So it's absolutely perfect to have a relationship expert on here to kind of talk about that part of his expertise, because I've shared it before and I'll say it again and again. I am a nutrition expert, but I am not a dating expert. So it's super helpful to have someone who can speak to that with a little bit more background and education behind it. So Matthew, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So the first question I always ask is for you to just introduce yourself by sharing who you are, what you do, and why you do what you do.
All right. My name is Matthew Phifer. I'm a toxic relationship specialist. I live in Dallas, Texas. However, I've spent time in New York, upstate New York, and also in DC. I am a trained psychotherapist. I went to St. Bonaventure University in upstate New York, and I chose this field. I've always had an interest in relationships. I initially wanted to become a marital and family therapist, and that's what I really went to school for. And the program that I went was a very well-rounded program where you kind of learn about all aspects of therapy. And my first job out of college was the place I did my internship at, and it was actually in the field of addictions. And when I was coming out of college, that was the last thing I wanted to do. I probably would have taken at least my mindset going into the field. And everyone out of college, obviously, you take the first job that you get, and so that was the first job that I got. I thought I was going to hate it. It was the thing that I was dreading the most, was to deal with people who were struggling with an addiction. And I not only did I fall in love with it, I found out that I was very good at it. And not only did I find out I was very good at it, but part of the reason why I was so good at it was I found out that there was a lot of correlations between people who struggle with an addiction and people who are in a toxic relationship. So then not only did I find that out, but I found out there was parallels, not only parallels, but it was the same part of the brain that affected both. Mm. And so while I was working in the addictions field, I was learning a lot. And I was learning a lot about, let's say, the back end of toxic relationships. And so as I was working with people who were struggling with addictions, I was actually learning a lot more about where I ultimately wanted to go with toxic relationships. And at the time, I wasn't even thinking toxic relationships. I was really thinking marital and family. And then as time progressed, and as I developed as a clinician, as I developed as a coach, and as I started to go into my own business, I started to notice this trend with narcissism, this trend with people with cluster B personality disorders, and the conflict that people were having, and the codependent issues and the people-pleasing behaviors that people were in, and the dynamic of people going in and out of these type of relationships, not realizing that these relationships were really going nowhere. And the guidance that they were getting from other therapists, the guidance that they were getting from pastoral counseling was really way off. And, so I decided that this was a good fit for me, and it was, in a lot of ways, a calling, and so it was a natural fit. I went into it. There was a couple of podcasts very similar to this that I did. They went viral, and I saw that it was a need. And so I decided that this was something that I was going to do, and went for it.
Yeah, and you're really good at what you do from what I can see. I mean, I've never worked with you personally, but I just love the content that you put out. You really, I think you say what people need to hear, or may not want to hear, but they really need to hear. So it's really appreciated. So at the end, will tell more people where they can find you and kind of read along and watch your content and stuff like that. But for now, I would really love to kind of discuss a little bit more about what is a narcissist, because I've shared this before in conversations when I'm talking about my book, or, just in general. Sometimes the word narcissist, I think, gets thrown around a lot. And so like for me personally, I dated like not the greatest men. I really do believe my previous ex was actually a narcissist, and I'm sure by you sharing, I'll be able to get a better idea of that. The other ones just weren't a good fit, and it doesn't. And I would just kind of say that, or I'd hear even my girlfriends say that about guys they were with, and like it just like wasn't a good fit. Like so, sometimes I think we might use that term a little bit lightly, but it sounds like there's an actual like diagnosis. They just mentioned like a part of the brain that someone has. So I would love to hear what is the definition of a narcissist, and then how would someone actually spot one?
When we talk about the definition of a narcissist, we're talking about someone that has a very, and it can get very, it can get very difficult to diagnose. It's actually the reason why, if you actually look up narcissism, it seems as though there's like the diagnosis of them is very, very rare. The reality of it is that there's more of them out there than what actually shows in terms of diagnosis, because they don't stay in therapy, right? They don't stay long enough. I've had them in my office before, and they literally leave in the middle of therapy. They may not stay. They may come for the first session. They won't return for the second. They don't believe that they're the problem. Right. They just genuinely believe that the world revolves around them. They have a very strong sense of entitlement, a very grandiose attitude. In a lot of ways, they think they're God, right? For a long story short, that any problem that exists because of other people. There's typically there is a narcissistic cycle of abuse where in the beginning, it starts out as, so you may hear the term love bomb phase, right? The clinical term is called idealization phase, where they put you on a pedestal. And it feels like everyone has, so I shouldn't say everyone, a lot of people have experienced this love that it feels like they're your soulmate, right? Typically, I see that as a warning sign, right? Like this person can do no wrong. And they will even present as if this person can do no wrong. But what happens is that over time, it goes from the idealization phase and this love bomb phase, like they can do no wrong, to now all of a sudden it's not just mistreatment, it's literal abuse. And it doesn't always have to be physical. A lot of I'd say most of the people I work with, it's not physical abuse. It's psychological, it's emotional. And what are they doing it for? It's control. Right. So when you're in a relationship where it feels like I've lost not only my self of my sense of identity in this relationship, I also feel like I can't get out of this relationship without something happening, without my bank account being wiped out, without this person using my kids as a weapon against me, without my reputation being tarnished. Right? They may even say that during the course of the relationship. If you ever leave, I'm going to do this. Right? I'm going to do this. They may even threaten self-harm if you were to ever leave. But on the surface, what's confusing is that on the surface of a lot of these relationships, people will often coin and look at your relationship as relationship goals. Right? You guys have the perfect relationship. You guys are, because the narcissist is very, very image conscious. Yes. Right? And so on the surface, they think, everyone thinks that this person is one of the greatest people in the world. How did you get so lucky to get this guy? How did you get so lucky to get this girl? And behind the scenes, quite often they are a monster. Right? And sometimes, and I talked about physical and psychological, emotional abuse. Sometimes it does get physical. Right? And they will push you to a point where it causes what's called reactive abuse. And then they will twist it and make it seem as though they are the ones that are the victim. Quite often when I talk about, and you brought up a good point about that it's very difficult to point narcissists out, right? Which is the reason why I actually don't, I'm sorry, you said that narcissism gets thrown around a lot, and I agree with that. And those are the reasons that even though I talk about it a lot on social media, so people have a title to go with some of these behaviors, when I actually talk clinically, I actually tell people the title and the diagnosis actually doesn't matter.
Right.
Because they will spend a lot of time trying to figure out if this person is a narcissist. Well, let's not worry about if this person is a narcissist. Let's talk about how you're being treated. Mm-hmm. Right? Let's talk about how you're feeling on the inside. And quite often, by the time people get to me, they're experiencing what's called cognitive dissonance. And how I know that they're experiencing it is the feeling of walking on eggshells. Can do no right. Everything that I do, this person is going to lose it. They're going to have a tantrum. They're going to have a temper, and I just feel like I'm walking on eggshells at every little step, every little moment that I make, every little move I make, that I can do no right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if anyone's being triggered by this, but if you're listening, it just brings back so many unfortunate memories. I just really hope that someone who's listening isn't in this situation. And if they are, they know that they can get out of it, because you shouldn't feel like we're walking on eggshells every time you get into your home, or you shouldn't feel like, is this the right time to bring this up? I want to make sure he's in a good mood first, that is not healthy. That is definitely not healthy. So I guess, is there any tips you have for someone who identifies whether it's clear that this person they're with is a narcissist, or they just have some sort of a feeling like they're just in something that is toxic? What would you say is the first thing that they could do or should do to kind of help them slowly get out of it?
First thing I would say is that you have to stand in your truth, because they are so manipulative. They use tactics called gaslighting, right, where they actually recreate a new narrative, right, to make it seem, and another term for gaslighting is crazy making, where they will make it seem and feel as though you are crazy. Some of the narcissist's favorite terms and favorite phrases: you must be bipolar, you must be this, you must be a narcissist, you must be, did you take your pills today? They will literally drive you crazy with a lot of these gaslighting techniques that they're using, right? When you try to call them out on some of their behaviors, I didn't do that, I didn't say that. They will use manipulative tactics. They will use sleep deprivation, right, to get their way, where they will keep you up all hours of the night until you cave to an argument, right? And so stand in your truth. Quite often, narcissists will do these things and will get you to cave to their demands, and then you're left feeling very, very confused. Why are you confused? Because, number one, everyone else loves the narcissist. They don't see the monster that you see behind closed doors. Mm-hmm. So it seems as though maybe this person is right. Maybe I am the narcissist. Maybe I am crazy. Maybe I am bipolar, because everyone else loves this person, but all I see is a monster. Maybe I'm the one that's provoking this. Stand in your truth. There has to be a level of self-awareness. But part of the problem is that a lot of times, well, I shouldn't say a lot of times, the other issue is that the person who's the victim oftentimes is a codependent. So you're like a blank check to the narcissist, where they literally will say and do whatever it is that they want and convince you of anything you want, and all you do is please them all day long, mm-hmm. right? And so for you to accept responsibility that does not belong to you is second nature to you, right? So, but you have to stand in your truth and realize that what you're enduring is not healthy for you, and it's not healthy for if you have kids with them, it's not healthy for them. And the second part to this is to do what is uncomfortable, which is to stay silent. You actually have to speak up. Mm-hmm. Either come to someone like myself, someone outside of the circle. Narcissists do a really good job of making a very big world seem very, very small. So everyone who is in your circle quite often fits the narrative of what the narcissist does. They try to isolate you, right? They will remove you from friends, remove you from family members, or create some sort of distance between people who don't co-sign on the narcissist behavior, so to speak. And the people in that within that circle will say like, yeah, he is a great guy. Yeah, she is a great woman. And, he's a great father, great mother, this and that. And will sign off on the things that they're doing. But when you step outside of the circle and you start talking to people who, and you tell them what you're experiencing, they'll tell you the truth. And like, that sounds like gaslighting. That sounds like this, that, even if they don't know the terms, that sounds abusive. That sounds terrible, right? Get involved in, for example, I have a free online support group. You can get into something like that, regardless if it's mine or someone else's, and literally just type out what you're experiencing and, hey, what does this sound like to you? And they will tell you very quickly, it sounds like you need to get out, right? Or it sounds like you guys are just dealing with issues. They'll tell you, like, it doesn't sound like he's a narcissist. It sounds like, X, Y, Z. But if you're experiencing a lot of the things that I'm talking about, then it's narcissism, right? Yeah. And it's or let's not even say narcissism. It's something that it's abusive. You need to get out of it.
And so I also, when I was sharing with you online, and I'll share with the listeners, so like I work with a lot of people who struggle with a history of an eating disorder or currently are struggling with an eating disorder, usually binge eating, excessive, it's just the whole cycle, purging through exercise or vomiting and restricting their intake and trying to achieve a certain number and all that stuff. And like, when, on the surface, it's obviously like, we can blame diet culture as part of it and like body image stuff, and for sure. But also too, very often there is an underlying mental illness like anxiety or depression or OCD. But then there can be those times where it's just, they're not in a good environment. So they're in a toxic relationship. And so have you had experience working with people who maybe showed up with emotional eating or binge eating or an eating disorder, and really when you got down to it, it wasn't, and I'm very upfront with my clients. I'll say, I'm going to help you with your eating behaviors. I'm going to help you with your nutrition. But if you're not in therapy, like we're only going to get you so far. So do you have experience working with people who struggle with that, and have you noticed any correlations there?
Yes, when I was in DC, I actually worked in partnership with a weight loss clinic. It was a medically induced weight loss clinic, and I worked with several people there. And so the doctor, he would perform surgeries and things like that to help people with weight loss, and it was very surface level with them, right? And I would talk to the person about why they actually wanted the weight loss, because what the doctor and I discovered was that they were coming there for a reason. They didn't experience, 30, 40, 50 years of struggling with eating to then all of a sudden want this rapid weight loss treatment, right? Mm-hmm. Something happened, right? And quite often it was because of some sort of toxic relationship. Because when we talk about abuse, when we talk about mental and emotional abuse, quite often that is a part of it. You have someone that is talking about your eating habits. You have someone that's talking about your weight. If they cheat, oftentimes they will blame you and say that they cheated because you gained weight. They cheated because you're too skinny, you're too fat, you're too tall, you're too fill in the blank. You're too this. Right? You don't eat right. You don't work out. You don't. And so when you are left for another person, quite often the first thing that you do is you either end up at one of those type of clinics that I'm talking about, or you lost control of the relationship. So quite often you try to control anything else. That control could be eating, by not eating, by overeating, binge eating. So you're lost control of your relationships. Well, all of a sudden you want to control the relationship that you have with food. Oftentimes there's a very direct correlation. And if you're in the relationship, oftentimes the pressure that they put on you, because narcissists are very, very image focused. And so if you start to, and keep in mind, it's not even just about the image. It's also about them having control over your life. So oftentimes they'll say you're gaining weight, you need to hit the gym, you need to do this, and you need to, and not in a healthy way.
Right.
Right. I think that, when we're in a healthy relationship, and they're encouraging you to continue to go to the gym and encouraging you to live a healthy lifestyle. With someone who is narcissistic, they are very good at doing what's called a double bind, where they'll say like, oh, you're gaining weight, you need to lose weight, you need to tone up or this or that. Then the minute that you actually go do it, they'll pick on you for going to the gym. Like, what's the point? You're not even working hard enough. Are you actually going to run when you actually get there? Or are you going to just sit there on the machines? Are you going to actually run? Or are you going to walk like a little slug? Or, you hear the vicious things, but it's a double bind. They'll make fun of you. They'll pick on you for not doing it. And then they'll pick on the traits of you actually doing it. You eating a salad. What's the point of you eating a salad when all you're going to do is eat pizza this weekend anyway, and you're already fat, might as well just give it up, right? You'll hear different things, and it's called a double bind, and they will use things like this very frequently, very often, and people, even within the relationship, will then often find themselves with some sort of eating disorder because of the mental, psychological, and emotional abuse that they've endured.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so mean. Like, honestly, like I'm just like, it's so mean. And I guess my question is, and listen, I'm very honest, and I'm not going to go into details about my relationship and I don't even really talk about too much in the book, but it's like, and it's okay if whatever you say, when I'm going to ask you this question, I'm not going to be offended, but like, why do women, and I also don't want to just generalize, not just women, but I guess the person on the narcissistic, that's not the narcissist, the one in the relationship, that codependent one, right? Like, why? Like, how do we tolerate? Because I know it. And the only way I can describe it is like when you're in it. And I think part of it is what you talked about recently on your Instagram post about like relationship goals and kind of having it all kind of looking for the wrong things. But it's like, obviously, as you're talking, I am like what a mean person that you're just describing. Like, how could anybody tolerate that? Meanwhile, 3 or 4 years ago, I was tolerating that. So I just want to know from you, like why do we do this to ourselves?
You're 100% right. If someone were to treat you like that right off the bat, no one would stay in that relationship.
Right.
Codependent or not, right?
Right.
No one would do it. The problem is going back, this is where my experience with addiction really starts to come in, right? Is that when we talk about the idealization phase that we were talking about earlier, right? That is the part of the relationship that the narcissist or toxic person, whatever issue that they have, literally get their hooks into that part of the brain that we were talking about, right? So you literally become addicted to the person, and they put you on a pedestal and they idealize you for a period of time that can last for months. It can last for a long period of time. And you literally, it becomes, you hear people say, I think I found my soulmate. I think I found the one. The whole, and it's like this euphoric feeling. And I want to pause there for a second, and I want to translate this over back to the addictions world. And I want to tell you how they correlate. Mm-hmm. When you talk to someone who has ever struggled with a heroin addiction, right? I won't get into how they actually got into heroin, because it's, no one wakes up and says, I'm just going to start a heroin addiction. It's, they lead into it with other opportunities. But the first time they use heroin, they will tell you that it was the most euphoric feeling that they've ever felt in their life, right? So they are relieved of like whatever pain symptoms that they might have, but it's the most euphoric feeling that they've ever felt in their life. Well, each time that they use after that, they're trying to recreate that euphoric feeling that they felt the first time. Mm-hmm. So they will increase or they will use more often. Let's go back to the relationship. So during that idealization phase, it's the most euphoric feeling that these people have ever felt in their life. It's better than any other relationship they've ever felt. This person's putting them on a pedestal. How could I don't even deserve this type of treatment? We're on vacation every other week. we're talking about marriage, we're talking about babies, we're talking about this and that. And I just love the way this makes me feel. This is the perfect guy, perfect woman for me. I never thought I would ever find this person. Then it slowly transitions over to the devaluation phase. Well, when they start to devalue you and they start the abuse, and it's never like extreme in the beginning. It's very subtle, right? Very subtle in the beginning. And you start, when it first happens, you think back to the idealization phase, that euphoric feeling, just the same way that person that got stuck on heroin did, right? And the only thing that you can think about is, this person is so perfect, my soulmate, right? And you're still stuck in that idealization phase. They are so wonderful. They are so perfect. This must be, I must be the reason why I'm being treated this way. I did this, right? I created this. I must have pissed them off to a point that, because I couldn't possibly deserve this type of treatment, right? In the beginning, right? So you start working hard to get back to the idealization phase. Let me make this better, right? So then I can get our relationship back to what it was in the beginning. The same way that heroin addict would work really hard to try to recreate that euphoric feeling. It will never happen for either one of them, which is the reason why both will allow for the abuse to continue. Both the heroin addict will continue, person struggling with heroin, I hate calling them addicts, person struggling with heroin will do whatever they can to get back to that euphoric feeling, in the same way that you're going to do everything you can to get back to the idealization phase. Narcissists will never allow it. They never wanted it to stay in the idealization phase. They want it to stay in the devaluation phase, where they're abusing you, right? Because when I'm abusing you and you still stay despite my mistreatment, it makes me feel powerful. Right. And that's where the cycle begins. And the minute that you start to try to leave, they will give you little hints of the idealization phase. They'll all of a sudden start to love bomb you all over again and start to treat you really nicely like they did in the beginning. Not quite as nice, right? But just enough to make you stick around. Just enough to make you realize or make you feel like that person is just around the corner. So you work even harder, and it just stays in a vicious cycle.
Yeah, definitely. I guess what I would love to talk about now, which would be helpful, I think, for our listeners is, well, I guess before we jump there, is there a way to spot a narcissist in the earlier phases?
Absolutely. Okay.
How would someone do that? Because I think that, the experience that I share in the TED Talk and in the book is all about, like, when it comes to dieting, it's like the beginning, anything's easy, right? It's the honeymoon phase. Everything's easy. So we do it, right? But then there's a point where things kind of stall. I mean, then you have to assess, like, is the work I'm putting in worth it to get a return on that? Right. But like, at the same time, there are plenty of diets that I just don't think anybody has any business getting into. Like, we can use it as an experience and we can learn from it, but it's just like, probably you could have also learned the same lesson without doing that, like, really restrictive diet. So I guess, yeah. So how would someone know in the beginning so that we're not, finding themselves now in a harder position to get out?
There's 3 ways that I would tell you that you could spot this out. Number 1 is spotting out that you're being love bombed or that you're being idealized. And how you see that is this person is way over the top, like helicopter rides for like first couple of dates. You're going, they want to rush into a relationship. They want to, even the thoughts and the feelings of like, oh, this person is the one. I tell people to pay attention to, a lot of times people take chemistry the wrong way. Yeah. We have a lot of chemistry. You don't want chemistry. You want compatibility. Compatibility is something that's long lasting. Chemistry can burn up in a matter of minutes, right? So if you feel like this person is rushing into a relationship, just keep in mind that if they're rushing into the relationship, they will be just as quick to rush out of the relationship, even if it's several years down the line. So the love bomb, that's number one. Number two, you need to pay attention to how you feel. So how you feel is very, very key, because even in the idealization phase, as euphoric, as great as it is, something typically happens that gives you an alert internally, right? Your intuition. You hear people say, trust your gut. Something typically happens that lets you know that something is off. Even if all your friends and all your family loves this person, loves this guy, loves this girl, something tells you, like an alert goes off. It could be something as simple as you see that they're overly flirtatious with someone, right? It could be like, long story short, their mask, there's a narcissistic mask. It'll slip just briefly. They may like kind of give you like a really off tone, and something alerts you on the inside that this person is not who they're saying that they are. You need to trust that gut. Right. And so number two is trust your gut. Number three, when you're dating, you need to have a very full and authentic, happy life. And here's the reason why. It's not just for you. It's because when you have a very full life, it forces you to set boundaries. Boundaries are a narcissist's like worst nightmare. They hate being told no. I don't care if it's the idealization phase. I don't care if you've been married to this person for 30 years. When you tell them no, right, and this is hard in the beginning because, like you said, in the honeymoon phase, like everything's good. You want to hang out with this person. You want to spend like every waking moment with this person. It is of the utmost importance that you stick to boundaries, that if you have game night with your girls, if you have, game night with the guys, like whatever, stick to it, right? And when the person says, let's hang out that night or whatever, politely tell them, I got plans tonight. I don't know if you know that every Thursday I'm with the girls, every Friday I'm with the guys. Watch what they do, right? Mm-hmm. And if they really start giving pushback on that, if they start getting angry with it, if they start throwing it back in your face, if they do things like, let's say like that very next day, like you try to hang out with them, or you try to call them, and like they are not answering your calls, and all of a sudden they are trying to have girls or guys night to try to like as a payback, right? Something's up. Just walk away, right? I said three, so those are the three. But the fourth thing I would say is that you in terms of getting out of it, don't stick around for more evidence. Those three things. Yeah. Enough, right? Yeah. You don't have to like wait and say like, let me see like what he does if in this situation. Let me wait and see what she does in that situation. Just know that that's enough. Yeah. Right. Just walk away at that point, because it only gets worse. Keep in mind you're in the idealization phase, so it only gets worse from there. Mm-hmm. So that boundaries thing is big. I want to elaborate on that, because I think that's something that. And I say women just because that's my clientele. So but everyone, I think that is something that in the beginning, especially when you first are starting a relationship, the boundaries are usually kind of like the first thing to go, because it is exciting. But you forget that, you want to have your life and the relationship. You don't want the relationship to be your life. Right. So you need to keep that. So I guess, do you think that's just a helpful tip for anybody, whether you're trying to avoid being in a narcissistic, like a toxic relationship or not? It is a healthy dynamic regardless. Yeah. Because you don't want to, you never want to lose yourself in a relationship. Mm-hmm. Right? You want it to be that you have your own identity. He or she has their own identity, and the two of you guys are coming together, for a good dynamic. Here's the other reason why you want healthy boundaries. Going back to what I said about living a very full, authentic life, you want to be very true and very authentic. The reason why is that, what if you guys don't like the same things? Right? Let's forget narcissism for a second. We're looking for somebody that we're compatible with. Right? And if you're not compatible with this person, it's not going to work long term. Mm-hmm. Right? I'm not saying that you have to like every single little thing of the same things, right? But there does need to be a good core group of items that that A, are common, right? That the two of you guys find in common. B, you also want to make sure that the things that you don't find interesting, that you don't have a problem with, right? If they go, if the two of you don't, maybe one of you likes boxing, the other one doesn't, right? That you don't have a problem with that, right? That it's not like a value system thing where it's like, oh, I just think that boxing's too violent and this, that it's like, oh, that's cool that you're into it. I'm that's not really my thing, but I'll support you in it, right? Those sorts of things. So you want to make sure that as this relationship progresses, that you can still be who you are, true, authentic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like don't pretend you like sports if you actually don't, because you will be miserable. Yeah, that's the worst. Okay. I don't like sports. I used to love them. I was the biggest sports fan probably until college, and then I realized, like, okay, if I want to be a really good RD, I have to stop staying up past midnight to watch the Nets lose every night and actually study. So my values change.
And that happens. Like, and but I know you're with someone, but I imagine you don't have, if he is into sports, you don't have a problem with him being in sports. It's
no.
You're going to watch.
Fortunately, he's not, so it actually works for our compatibility because we rather go out together and we don't need to watch sports on a Friday night. We'd rather just like go out and drink margaritas, drink margaritas and have tacos, which is nice that we have it. Like, but if we didn't, that's also okay too.
Right.
I can occupy myself with doing other things.
If you were heavy into sports, that's different. Whereas every single weekend.
Right. It might be hard. Right. Totally.
Because then when are you actually spending time together?
Totally. Yeah. That's a really good point. Okay, so let's kind of go off of that. I would love to, because I think the visual or the surface level of like longevity and like as a relationship goal, I don't really think there's nothing's really tangible there. So like a lot of people are aiming for, the house, the car, the kids, the whatever, which is all great, obviously, like if that's something that aligns and you guys kind of agree on that, but like really down to the core, what would you say someone needs to be looking for to have like a really strong relationship? So when we say hashtag relationship goals, what should we be aiming for rather than maybe what most people I think are focused on, which is just like the ring and stuff.
Number one, communication, right?
Yeah.
You should be able to communicate with this person, right? And when I say communication, I don't just mean texting throughout the day and those sorts of things and that you guys talk on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. I literally mean so going back to what we were talking about with someone in an unhealthy relationship and you feel like you're walking on eggshells to even bring certain subjects up, you should feel free and comfortable, right? To be able to express your feelings, right? Keyword feelings. Here's the thing about expressing feelings on both ends. We can talk about this with both healthy and unhealthy relationships. When you express your feelings and someone says or acts like they don't care, right? You have to look at that dynamic. Because if they don't care about what they're doing makes you feel, I'll let you know that they don't really care much about you. It's all about them all the time, right? You want to be in a healthy relationship that, regardless if it is major or something simple, when you bring up something that, like, hey, listen, that really bothered me, made me feel, I kind of felt down about, how you said that the spaghetti I made wasn't seasoned well and things like that. Kind of put me in my feelings a little bit, right? You want someone that is going to talk to you about that, right? And is going to not make you feel, not say things like you're just being overly sensitive. You're just doing this, but someone that is going to unpack that with you, apologize, right? And key is change their behavior. Right, someone who respects how you feel. Right, so those are when we look at healthy dynamics, and like I said, someone that if you're a goofy person naturally, right, that you feel comfortable being goofy and it's respected and it's accepted, right. So when they come home and you're doing some goofy dance for TikTok or whatever, and that's who you are, that you can feel at peace and normal, that you don't have to like, pack up your ring light and pack up your headset and this and that, and you can literally just be you. Mm-hmm. Right? People should feel free to I don't want to say come and go. What is the saying? You want to love and be loved in such a way that the person you love feels free. Right? You should feel free in your relationship, free to talk, free to communicate, free to express yourself. Right? And in a lot of ways, as scary as this is, you should feel free to be able to go if you want to. Right? And not feel trapped in any way. Mm-hmm. Right? And of course, the goal is the goal is to have a long-lasting relationship, but you should feel free, right? That if things went sideways, you're not a prisoner, right? You're in a relationship.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Those are really great things. So, all right. So compatibility, communication, feeling free. Anything else? Or would you say those are the basic foundational things?
I would say those are the basic foundational things. I mean, we can talk, anything outside of that, you can talk about goals that you have together. Right. Obviously, I think it's a given. If someone wants kids and you don't want kids, that's an issue.
That's hard.
Right?
Yeah.
Because even if one person compromises, right, you're looking at, well, is that feeling going to come back up again later? Mm-hmm. Right? Or someone is, actually, let me take that back. The other thing, there's a really good book called Attached, right, that I encourage everyone who's dating, anyone who's in a relationship or looking for a relationship to read. Because when we talk about, we also have to take a look at our attachment styles, how we attach to people, right? If we're, so there's insecure attachment styles called avoidant attachment style and an anxious attachment style. There's some people who get very anxious about being away from their partner. There's some people who really enjoy their independence in relationships. There's some people who are very secure in their attachment style, and so they, like if you haven't called in a while, they're actually completely secure about it. Like, oh, he'll call later, she'll call later. Like and they just don't think too craps about it, right? Whereas someone with an anxious attachment style, oh my God, they're going to break up with me, and they're really, really worried about that. Well, here's a problem. If you have an anxious attachment style that thinks that that the world is collapsing when you haven't heard from them in 2 hours, right? And you have with an avoidant who enjoys their independence, that's a problem, right? Mm-hmm. Now we either need to talk about how the avoidant needs to meet in the middle a little bit. Actually, it needs to be both. The avoidant needs to be more communicative, and the anxious also needs to back off a little bit and needs to understand and needs to learn how to self-soothe. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that can be a little bit more difficult, right? But if you know your attachment style and you know what style you are best suited with, you know how to look for that in a potential romantic partner.
Yeah, and the point being is that if you'd feel comfortable even bringing that up, mm-hmm. and if you don't feel comfortable having that conversation with that person, then that probably is not someone, there's not a lot of substance there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is so good. I really feel like people are really going to get a lot out of this. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that maybe is a topic of conversation that usually comes up? Like, what type of people do you currently work with now? Are you currently working with people like couples, or are you doing more people, like you work with people one-on-one who may be in a relationship or dating?
One-on-one, and what I do is mostly people who are exiting a toxic relationship or who are recovering. Because quite often what happens is people, especially if it was highly emotionally or psychologically abusive, they start dealing with residual effects of the trauma of that relationship. So people who say just leave, people will just leave, and they realize, like, I'm psychologically screwed up right now.
Yeah.
Right? You hear and you see people say things like, I never want to date again, right? I never want, I don't ever like, and they're completely closed off to the world because of what they experienced in the relationship. So I help people come out of that situation to help people heal from these toxic and abusive relationships, whether it be physical, mental, or emotional. The other thing I help out with is people who are, when you go through a divorce with a narcissist, that is another tricky dynamic.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up because, I mean, I'm sure you've had this experience. Like, it was really traumatizing for me when I broke up with my ex because he would show up. I had to get the police involved. I had to get my work needed to be alerted so that he could come, and he was constantly calling. And I'm honestly a little bit afraid to share this right now because I know this is going to be a public platform, and I'm afraid he might hear it or something. To be honest, so it's really scary. So I'm curious, how you've what if? Yeah, I feel like that's something that happens. So, what would you tell someone who's experiencing that? Because it takes a really, I had to say no, 400 times. I had to get so many people involved. It was kind of building up an army in order to get out.
Building up the army was a great job, right? That goes back to what I was talking about earlier about talking with someone and opening up with people. The no is what I would have told you to do there is to go no contact, right? Mm-hmm. And that leads to quite often a lot of anxiety for people because you're so used to telling this person, talk every single time that they text. If you don't, these people, when you're dealing with them, they create a sense of urgency, right? So if you don't text them within a certain amount of time, they're blowing up, right? And they are really and so it gets very nerve-wracking in the beginning, right? And I help people walk through that process, not only of getting themselves physically safe, but also breaking free of that control and that it's a trauma bond, right? Is what it's called. And so you have to break free from that trauma bond, and it's not easy. What it is, it's breaking free from the addiction because they are also addicted to you. It's called a narcissistic supply. Mm-hmm. So that everything I just explained, that is easier when you don't have kids, you don't have a house, you don't have, and I don't want to say easy.
No, I hear you though. I know, I do. I hear you.
Because you have no contact, because you can go no contact. However, keep in mind that these people want control. So if you have kids, you have a house, and you're going through a divorce with someone who's narcissistic, becomes very problematic because they have no interest in any of those things, and they will drag you through court. They will there's terms called legal abuse, financial abuse, and they will execute all of those things, right? They will alienate you from your children. They will use your children as a weapon. They will manipulate your children. They will manipulate your family, and so it becomes very problematic. So it's every situation is different. Everyone's dynamic. Everyone, so there's also different types of narcissists. There's covert types. There's malignant. There is the overt, which is the classic type. And so for every single one, strategy might be very different.
Mm-hmm. So how, would somebody, because you've been amazing and I feel like we can go on for hours, but I want to be mindful of your time. How would someone get in contact with you if they were interested in working with you?
The easiest way is to go to my website, mattphifercoaching.com. Mm-hmm. You can book a session. You can book I always start out with a consultation. And so it's a 30-minute consultation, and we kind of talk about what your dynamic is. And we would talk about what strategy we would use to handle that situation. And we basically go from there. But you also can follow me on TikTok, on Instagram. I actually give free advice on YouTube. I want to preface that I'm literally recording right now, so you may most of the videos that you see right now are probably older, but you can actually ask me questions by emailing me. Just ask Matt at mattphifercoaching.com, and I'll answer questions for free on YouTube. And because the reality of it is that there are people who, like I just described, are going through financial abuse and they're literally broke. right? And so I understand that. And so for those reasons, I allow for people to ask me questions for free on YouTube. And just give me some time because I get a lot of emails, I get a lot of DMs. And obviously, my paid clients I have to take care of. But the way that my theory behind that is that if I'm answering things for free, I would like for it to be, obviously I'm going to keep everything confidential. Even if you have names in there, I would change the names out. But the way that I look at it is that if I'm doing something for free, then it needs to be on a public platform so other people who have similar struggles can also hear and get the help that they need as well. Because what you start to find out is that there are other people who have similar struggles, and so where one person, while one person is being taught, other people can learn as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So going back to your question, I'm on all social media platforms, Matt Phifer Coaching. And I also have a podcast, Toxic to Triumph, and that's all the same places that yours are.
Oh, I did not know that you had a podcast.
Yeah, I have a podcast.
I'm going to start listening to that for sure. Toxic to Triumph.
Triumph. It's on Spotify. It's on Apple Podcasts. It's on iHeart and Pandora. Pretty much anywhere you can find a podcast.
Oh,
so
wow.
I'm in the process of recording season 3 right now. So I started the podcast out by myself, so you can actually hear some of the transition. And then season 2, I started interviewing other people. And so season 3, long story short, in the podcast, it's literally me having dialogue with other clinicians. So it's going to be a well-rounded spot for you to kind of understand toxic relationships from all angles, right? I'll talk to child psychologists. I'll talk to, I might have you on there and talk to you about.
I would love to be on there. Thank you. Yeah. That would be awesome. So I'm really excited to listen. And as we were chatting, I was taking notes because the whole book is written except for chapter 4. Because I believe in individualized care when it comes to nutrition, but it's hard to decide. But anyways, chapter 4 is how to measure what matters. And so I'm trying to find the parallels, and I have them, but I think you really just helped me because obviously compatibility, the nutrition plan has to be compatible with your lifestyle, but obviously your relationship, and there needs to be communication. So, talking with yourself, listening, how does your body feel, then also talking with your partner. So this has been so incredible. I really, really hope, guys, if you're listening, first of all, if you're listening and you're struggling and you're in a toxic relationship, please know that there are resources. Matt just provided them. And please reach out for help. I know how hard it is to take that, to schedule that appointment, that initial consult. That's usually it's so scary, but once you just do that part, you'll feel such a relief. You'll be able to breathe again. And that's just going to be the beginning, but it's the biggest step and the best step that you can take. So please follow Matt on all accounts. I'll put all of his information in the show notes. Any last minute words or things you want to say before we wrap up?
Last thing is, that relationships aren't supposed to suck, right? And so if you're not happy, if you're not fulfilled, right, you really need to take a look at that. Yeah. And if they're not taking responsibility, right? And the other thing is, like I said, just talk to other people. You can follow me, and if you're seeing some of the dynamics, if you're following me on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook, you'll if you're spotting a lot of these behaviors and it seems strangely similar, then more than likely there's an issue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much again, guys. If you're not following Matt, go follow him. If you're not already subscribed to the Tips with Tony podcast, please subscribe. A new episode comes out every Monday and every Wednesday. And when you're subscribed, you don't miss a beat. As always, I'm Tony Marinici, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.